Okay, guys, my name is Jean-Luc Molino. I'm a student here at BYUI, and I will be presenting my midterm project for my communications class here now. So let me change to presentation mode. Okay, so like I said, we'll be going over some of the things that we learned in this past semester, which we're only halfway through, of course. But I'll be diving into innovation and the precursors to that, which is learning and creativity. The title of my presentation, as you can see here, is How Learning and Creativity Drive Innovation. Why some companies create breakthrough ideas while others stagnate. By Jean-Luc Molyneux, which is me, as I said before. Okay, so diving into things. Before I talk too much about innovation, I want to talk about what that is. So before I tell you why it's important, how it applies to business, and how learning and creativity come in, I want to talk about what is innovation, why it might be important to us. To start out, I'm going to share a quote from a guy that we've read about in this past semester. In fact, just last week, Harvard Business Study by W. Edwards Deming. W. Edwards Deming is a guy I really respect. He helped to build the Japanese economy after World War II. He started out just as a U.S. based agricultural scientist, but he learned a lot about innovation and bettering of processes. For that reason, the U.S. assigned him to Japan's economy. Uh, yeah, so he said regarding innovation and leadership, putting out fires is not improvement of the process. This only puts the process back to where it should have been in the first place. Um, yeah, so in kind of more simpler and modern terms, when he says putting out fires is not the improvement of process, what that means is if you're just fixing mistakes, you're not improving anything, you're not innovating, you're just putting things back to where they were. And anytime we have innovation, we want to see two things. We want to see a change in the process or a change in the way that we're doing things, but also we want to see results. We want to get more output for what our input is. And that's what we're going to dive into today. So as we can see, I wrote down here, innovation is creating a better way of doing things. Innovation is improving future performance. That part is crucial. Anytime we innovate, we want to see better performance. It's not innovation if we don't see that. Innovation is not fixing mistakes, as we talked about before. It's not fires. It's not fixing mistakes. That's reacting. That's not innovating. And innovation is not returning a process to normal. Again, let's just fix the mistake or reacting to a mistake that comes. Okay, moving on. Learning. Let's talk about learning and knowledge because we cannot innovate unless we understand the process. So we have here learning creates knowledge. If that happens, leaders learn by one, observing, two, measuring, and three, experimenting. The reason why I address this specifically to leaders is because leaders are a special role and they're needed because they feel responsibility. They feel responsibility over their company or over their division or wing or whatever they're leading to better the way that things are going, to not only fix problems but also innovate, change and better performance of the company or of that group of people which they lead. Workers will generally not feel that way unless they are either incentivized or given a great deal of responsibility, typically through company ownership, for that to happen. Um, yeah, workers will observe, they might measure, they probably will not be experimenting different processes just to try to get better results because they're just there to make money. A tip for this, for these leaders, is learning reveals opportunities that others miss or others may miss. It is not possible to be a supportive leader if you do not understand the process to which you lead. So, in order to lead a process, you have to understand it. In order to innovate it, you have to understand it as well. So, after we learn, we obtain knowledge. It's now our responsibility to take that knowledge and apply it. We do that through creativity. So, right here, creativity applies knowledge. Creativity asks, what if we did this differently? How could we change the way that things are happening? Knowledge identifies the problem, and creativity imagines the solutions. Creativity is vital here, guys, but you cannot have creativity unless you've learned the knowledge before. You have knowledge of the process, knowledge of the company. In order to be creative and ask, how can we do things a little bit differently? Effective leaders help encourage those they lead to be creative, but you cannot command creativity. You can, however, incite it. I'm going to repeat that. You cannot command creativity, and you can incite it. Good leaders are aware of this. You cannot just tell people to be more creative. You have to provide opportunity for that. You need to reward them when they are creative in a good way. And you also need to make workers feel comfortable to be creative and to recommend a change in process when they see one. Good leaders are aware of this. So moving on, we have our equation, right? I've talked about some problems and brought up some solutions. All happy endings have an equation. I'm sure some math teacher, somebody who cares about math said that at some point. But here's my equation. It's learning plus creativity equals innovation, and you can't skip any of those steps. If you want innovation, you need knowledge. To get the knowledge you need to learn, you need to study it out. And then before you can innovate, you need to be creative and think and experiment with how can we change the way things are going right now. Um, I'll read here, when learning provides insight and creativity provides ideas, then and only then, together they can improve systems, which is innovation, as I said. Innovation is key to thriving in any industry. I'd even add, any industry will not succeed if they do not have innovation, because this world is changing quite a bit. Someone who knows more about that than me is a pretty successful guy. His name is Bill Gates. He said, success today requires the agility and drive to constantly rethink, reinvigorate, react, and reinvent. That's said by Bill Gates. The sources there as well. In case any of you don't know, Bill Gates is the reason why we're able to have this meeting today. He started Microsoft. He was their lead developer. Microsoft makes PowerPoint, which we're using today. That's the format which I'll submit this assignment. Uh, Microsoft made Windows, which mine probably your computer runs on. They helped make things like Android. They make the data centers that we use to do homework. Yeah, without Bill Gates, we would not be able to do this. He knows about innovation and especially adapting to a technology and AI-filled world. Going hand in hand with that, there's a warning here for if your business does not innovate. I'll read it from here. In this ever-changing world, one thing that is certain is your business will fail if you do not innovate. Guys, innovation is important here. Don't just take my word for it. I have a quote here from a renowned author, Peter Drucker, who in his book Managing in Turbulent Times in 1980, he said, "The greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence, it is to act with yesterday's logic." So I'm going to repeat that last part. Uh, even more dangerous than turbulence itself is acting with yesterday's logic. I've heard, and I'm sure that you guys have heard too, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So let's not run our business that way. Let's innovate. Let's be open to change. Let's even want to change and better our processes. I'll say it right now and I'll say it again. That doesn't just apply to business or to school. That applies to our family lives, our personal lives. That applies to all of life, guys. To act with yesterday's logic is generally not a good thing. We want to be better in ourselves and our business. Moving on, I have an example of innovation, and it's Toyota. So, kind of just small reference back to Mr. Deming when he was assigned to Japan. One of the things he emphasized was quality, and that's how Japan rebuilt its economy to focus on building quality products. Toyota is one of the many companies which did that. Reading off points here, instead of fixing defects after production, Toyota redesigned processes to prevent defects. Some of you may know Toyota is really renowned for being a reliable brand. And I believe that too. I actually only buy Toyota because I believe it to be so reliable. And one of the reasons for that is that they're not known for releasing new cars all the time. And they're not known for changing the design of those cars very much. What they do instead is when problems are reported, they change the process, they change their means of production, the way that they're building the cars, so that these problems don't happen in the future. And the result that they've seen is a higher quality in their vehicles, lower cost to make the vehicles, and they're one of, if not the most successful car companies out there, not just in the US market, but in the world market too. Yeah, keep it on with this example. I guess a counterexample of this is American companies. American companies have a lot of fans, obviously, but they're not known for being very reliable. Reason for that is American companies focused on innovating their product instead of their processes and did not see the same success. In other words, America is where the car was invented, and at one point it was also a leader in car production, and it should have stayed that way. But countries like Japan got really good at making cars that were more reliable than American companies. And the reason for that is what I have written here. So American car companies, you guys all know them. I don't need to name them. What they're known for is they release new cars and new models of the same cars every few years. And they do it anytime they hear problems. So if they hear, hey, our pickup truck or minivan is breaking down, what they do is they redesign it and they try to come up with a better design, which sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Toyota, on the other hand, what they do is they keep that vehicle. They just change the way they build it to be more reliable. Uh, or in other words, they just refine it rather than starting from scratch. And they've seen more success with that over the last 2 centuries. So yeah, just referencing that again. An example of that is the Toyota Corolla. The Toyota Corolla is by far the highest selling vehicle of the 21st century, with over 35 million sold. And not only that, it's known as being one of the longest lasting vehicles too, much longer lasting than most of its competitors. So it's known for reliability. I don't have, well, you can verify that stat at Evans.com. I don't have this stat, but it was amazing to see. The Corolla is, it's not like in neck and neck competition for the number one spot. It is by far the most sold vehicle of the 21st century and the most reliable. Number two was the Ford F-150, which was like a little over 20 million, so almost half as much sold as the Toyota Corolla. So it was amazing to see what Toyota's been able to do as they've innovated. Okay, so to kind of recap on some things that we've learned before we go into takeaways, I'm going to touch back on reaction and innovation. Remember the word reaction. Reaction is when leaders and workers both spend most of their time fixing problems. So process returns to normal, which is reaction. Guys, we don't want to just be reacting. It may feel really productive to see a lot of problems arise and try to fix those problems. But that's just returning things back to the way that they were. It's not really solving any long-term issues because either those problems or other problems will likely arise again. It's better to innovate the process. So when you react as opposed to innovate, let's read innovation. Excuse me. I'll just read the innovation point here. Innovation is when leaders encourage and reward workers as they obtain knowledge by learning and show creativity to improve process or to innovate. Guys, it's crucial to innovate as opposed to react in your business and your product. Yeah, just can't get that through enough. Because of that, for my main takeaways page, I thought about writing a lot here, but I figured it'd go over everyone's heads. So I decided just to have 2 lines. Okay. Line number one is leaders who react solve today's problems. I don't mean to knock reacting or knock fixing problems because that is a skill that a good leader needs and a good worker needs, right? It's a good thing to do. It's going to happen. We need to be able to do it. But the second line I'll add is leaders who innovate prevent tomorrow's problems. Whereas leaders who react solve today's problems, leaders who innovate prevent tomorrow's problems. In other words, a lot of the problems that we see could be totally avoided if we just encourage learning and creativity so that we can innovate and change the processes by which we do things. Um, if you make that change, you may not see a lot of results from it today, but over years and years of being in business, raising a family, or whatever your goal is, you will see the rewards from it. You'll have less problems than other businesses or other families. Yeah, the benefits are there. Innovate as opposed to react. I cannot stress that enough. And as I've been saying, I don't think that just applies to the way we do business or make products. I think it applies to our family lives, our personal lives, our school, sports, whatever you're passionate about. It's better to not just react to problems that come. It's better to prevent those problems by innovating. That's something I've had the pleasure to learn about this past semester, and yeah, I'm hoping to continue to learn about as we go about the semester. Thanks, guys. My name is Jean-luc, and that's my presentation.